Pak Karim. Okay, that's nice, that's nice.
Prof, kita stream live kan dengan YouTube juga.
Okay, boleh. I'm going to share a screen, my slides in a short while. Yeah.
Prof, kita tunggu. We have appointed our students as the MC. She will start off the session, and then we will have like Prof Shukran. He will give an opening remarks, and then we will pass the floor to you. Yeah, Prof.
Okay.
So we'll start by exactly by 3. Our Masters of Ceremony is already here. Our student, psychology student, Miss Farah Izzati Azam. So she will be conducting this event. Baru nampak Prof.
Tadi, you know what? My screen was a bit
I can see
reflecting.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good evening to all participants. Thank you for joining our Science of the Soul webinar series on this Barakah Friday. Before we begin this webinar, we would like to remind all participants to ensure that your microphone is muted throughout the webinar for the webinar to run smoothly. This event is also live streamed via the Ahaz Kerakashas YouTube. We will open the floor for questions during our Q&A session later. We would kindly to ask for your full cooperation and attention throughout the webinar. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very warm welcome to our honorable guest, Professor Dr. Nuraini Muhammad Noor, faculty member from Ibn Khaldun University in Turkey, and our speaker for today, Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman, Dean of Ahaz Kerakashas of International Islamic University Malaysia, Assistant Professor Dr. Jismawati binti Fauzaman, Head of Psychology Department, Professor Dr. Taufik Kasturi, Dean of Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, UMS Indonesia, and respected academics and students of Faculty of Psychology, UMS, all deputy deans, principals, academic members, administrative staffs, IUM students, and other respected attendees, brothers and sisters. Praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, we have been graced by the chance together in this momentous webinar. I am Farah Azam, the Master of Ceremony for our webinar today. It gives us great pleasure to welcome each one of you to our wonderful webinar series today, The Science of the Soul. It gives us great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you, and we appreciate your effort in allocating your precious time to be with us today. Before we proceed to the main agenda, let us recite together Ummul Kitab Al-Fatihah to seek blessings from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala.
المغضوب عليهم. آمين.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Next, to begin this program, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman to give his opening remarks for our Science of the Soul webinar series. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amin. Amma ba'd. Thank you, Sister Farah. Honorable Professor Dr. Nuraini Muhammad Noor, our guest speaker for today, speaking from Ibn Khaldun University in Istanbul, Turkey. Dr. Jusmawati Fauzaman, the head of Department of Psychology in Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kuliah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Sciences. Professor Dr. Taufik Kasturi, Dean of Faculty of Psychology in Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. All audience participants, wherever you are listening from, we have, I think, audience from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Istanbul as well. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very pleasant afternoon to all of you. Congratulations to Department of Psychology for starting this webinar series on science of soul. Right, so the science of soul has been, I think, a new scope, or I think a strengthened scope or an augmented scope in the Department of Psychology. Now that we have revised our curriculum and we want to make the science of soul more visible in our curriculum, especially at the undergraduate level. So thank you very much for Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta for joining force with the department in organizing this program. So as it is a webinar series, I believe there will be more seminar as such after this, right, Dr. Jusmawati, right? And I think this is more than timely for us to bring back or to right position the notion of soul in our study of psychology. I think we are all aware that psychology, being a science of science of soul, require more work on soul at the epistemological level, ontological level, zoological level, and also the teleological level. Now, this jive well or befits well with the current agenda of the Kuliah in strengthening the Islamization agenda. We are now adopting an E-OAT approach, whereby we subject our Islamization to these four notions. And I think there are also a series of webinars on this E-OAT approach. And today we are going to complement that E-OAT model by listening to one domain of knowledge, which is psychology. Thank you very much, Dr. Nuraini, for enlightening us, and also for the articles that you have been sharing with us before this. Right, so I look forward to having more participation from UMS after this. Inshallah, our next series of seminar will be again jointly organized with UMS. So with that, wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Shukran, for your wonderful insights on soul and Islamization agenda during your opening remarks. Now, we have come to the highlight of our webinar that all of us had been waiting for, which is the sharing session by Professor Dr. Nuraini Muhammad Noor from Ibn Khaldun University, titled The Soul as the In-Between. Professor Dr. Nuraini was previously attached to the Department of Psychology, IUM, for more than 20 years. Upon retirement, she is attached to the Ibn Khaldun University, a renowned and active researcher locally and globally. She attained her PhD in psychology from the Oxford University, and her field of interest is in social psychology. And a lot of her research is focused on women and well-being. She is now actively researching and writing on the science of the soul. She is instrumental to the effort of revitalizing the science of the soul at the Department of Psychology, IUM, and she spearheaded the book project of the Soul of Psychology, containing deliberations of the concept of soul by early Muslim scholars. Another work of hers is an edited book on psychology from Islamic perspective, a guide to teaching and learning, which is used for the teaching purposes at the department. With that, please welcome our dear Professor Dr. Nuraini Mohammad Noor.
Thank you very much, Sister Farah, and my welcome to all of you, Prof. Fikran as the Dean, Dr. Jusmawati as the head of the Psychology Department, and Prof. Taufik also as the head of the Department of Psychology, but in the university in Surakarta, yeah? And warm welcome also to all of you, the audience. I have been asked, I'm going to share with you my slides here. Hang on, where's my slide? Okay, can you see my slides? Okay, good. I'm going to share with you my slides. I'm going to go through the slides. The thing is this, the soul as the in-between. This particular presentation that I'm going to present is not a very straightforward presentation. To me, when I was preparing it also, I was a bit skeptical. I think it stirs, and because of that, some of you may have some difficulty in terms of understanding, but whatever it is, I think we all will understand it according to our position, our posh, if you like. Yeah. Now, therefore, there'll be some parts of the slides where I'm going to read from the text that I have prepared, to make it a bit more, what we say, comprehensive, a bit more understandable, because the slides alone, I feel, will not be enough in that sense. Yeah, as I said, it's not a topic that people normally discuss about, so there will be some difficulty. If you have questions later on, yeah, don't ask me during my talk. Wait until I'm done. There will be some questions that I will answer. If I feel it's not worth answering, I will just keep quiet. Okay? It's not supposed to be hurtful to you, but I think some question may just not be irrelevant. That's all. Yeah, so I will sift through in that particular sense. And again, this is based on my understanding of my reading and of what I know. So there will be differences in opinion. Yeah, I'm sure there will be, but you see, differences in opinion, diversities is part of life. Yeah, it's not something which we should be hostile or antagonistic. It's what it is in that particular sense. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about the soul as the in-between. There is a word for that. The Arabic word is bainiyah. It's in-between. So it goes this way, in between what? And this is what we want to look at. And this is the outline that I have for the talk. So I'm going to look at the soul, three things: its nature, its knowledge of itself, and its forgetfulness of itself. Yeah. This is the proper first slide. Now, God created man as a single entity, consisting of a physical body and the breathing of his spirit into the body. This divine act of inbreathing, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, results in the nafs, the soul or the self, which is seen to be the essence of who we are. This inbreathing is seen to be a metaphor of God endowing man with life and consciousness. The human self is the key issue here, because it alone can come to know God and the cosmos. And the way it does this is by developing and refining its own inner power, which is called, or which is known as the intellect, akal, or the heart, or cult. Now, if people are to develop and refine this power, they need to know the kind of self that they are dealing with. Basically, you need to know the human nature, to some extent, the nature of man. Now, you cannot know yourself, by asking the experts to tell you who you are. You cannot expect others to tell you about you. You cannot reach knowledge of yourself basically from the outside. It's only from the inside. So basically, it's only you who knows yourself. Therefore, until you know yourself from within, your self-knowledge will be based on imitation. Because it's others telling you about you, is not you who knows you from the knowledge of yourself. And that's why we have a term called realization or actualization, which means you know yourself. Okay, that's why the term self-knowledge is very important. Now, all knowledge in the Islamic tradition, basically the intellectual Islamic tradition, considered these to be important in the process of knowing oneself. Basically, this thing that we call self-knowledge or realization. Okay, and has used these. And then, sorry, let me repeat that. All knowledge in the intellectual tradition was considered an aid in the process of coming to know oneself. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, he who knows himself knows his Lord. Basically, you need to know your own soul. Yourself is your own soul. Your soul is yourself, basically. The soul that is fully aware of itself is the soul that has perfected its potentiality as a knowing subject. By being fully conscious of its own reality, such a soul becomes fully conscious of what God created it to be. Now, there are 4 major areas which have been considered as the main domains of realization. How do we get to know ourselves? So these are 4 main areas, One is metaphysics. Now, when you talk about metaphysics, what is it that we want to know? It's basically going back to first principles, as they say. So basically, it's a study of the first and final reality that underlies all phenomena. It's basically the topic of God. So the discussion centers on God in that sense. Secondly, is cosmology. Cosmology is the domain of the appearance and disappearance of the universe. Where does the universe come from? Where does it go? Third is what is called spiritual psychology, which is the domain of the soul, the human self. What exactly is this thing that we call the human being? Where do we come from? Where do we go? Why are so many people very different from each other? How can we develop our own potentialities? How do we become fully human? Those are some of the questions that are looked at within spiritual psychology. The final domain is the domain of ethics, what is called, or the domain of practical wisdom and interpersonal relations. How do we train our soul to obey the guidelines or the revelations of the prophets? How do we make sure what we do are in harmony with what our religion asks us to do? What are the virtues that we need to become a wholesome person, a wholesome soul, if you like? Now, although you have all these domains in terms of getting to know yourself, these 4 main domains, the main focus of all these domains is the self or the soul. Because the soul is the center. That's why we say the human self is the key, because only it alone can come to know God and the cosmos. The cosmos or the universe is the same thing. Now, we have a number of terms here. Cup, translated as heart in English, akal, ruh. These have all been applied to the inward reality or the inward dimension of man, but they do not refer to distinct and autonomous entities, only to different qualities or degrees of levels of a single reality. Now, Al-Ghazali used the term heart to refer to the essence or reality of the human being, spirit, to the source of perception and awareness, soul, to the self that undergoes transformation, and intellect, to the heart, to the extent that it perceives the realities of things. Now, Al-Din Al-Kubra says the soul, heart, and spirit give expressions to a single thing. However, for the Sufis, the soul is used, the term soul is used when, oh, I cannot see this properly. Oh, hang on. I'm trying to, can I make this small? Okay.
We can see it.
Okay, you can see, isn't it? However, the soul is used when that thing is defiled and hardened, heart when it becomes purified, and spirit when it gains nearness to God. Now, all these four terms refer to the subtle reality of the human being. I said there's subtle reality, which means if you open up the person, you can see it in that sense. That's why we talk about subtle. They refer to the subtle reality of the human being, but from different vantage points. As these realities are within the inward or the hidden dimension, where one ends and where the other begins cannot be pinpointed. What is important to note, however, is that it is the inward hidden dimension or existence that animates the outward visible self. Now, what exactly is the soul? As we just said just now, the soul is a subtle substance, It is man's real self, what makes one person different from another. It is a subtle substance possessing attributes of both body and spirit, and it lies in between the two. Lies in between the body and the spirit. Like the body, therefore, it can, like the body that consists of the earthly clay of this world, the soul can be dark, it can be unaware and ignorant, while at the same time, like the spirit, it can be luminous, it can be aware and intelligent. Therefore, the soul of the knowing subject is always in between. That's where the title was the soul as in between. Likewise, its knowledge of things is also in between, and it cannot be separated from both the known object and the knowing subject, because the domain of the human soul is always in between the earthly clay and the divine breath. Human experience is always soulish or imaginal, wavering between darkness and light, sleep and wakefulness, ignorance and knowledge, i.e., polarity. Therefore, it is always in a state of flux. It's always moving, it never keeps still. Now, according to Ibn Arabi, the intermediate reality of the soul that lies within the realm of the imaginal. The term used is mundus imaginalis. You can read the work of Corbin if you like. I think there is an article that I mentioned right towards the end, the references. the soul lies within the realm of the imaginal and is known only through the power or faculty of imagination, which is a mode of knowing that lies between sense perception and pure intellection. So it's in between these two. Imagination or the imaginary realm is not imaginary, because what is imaginary is a product of personal fantasy. So the imaginary realm is also called the world of suspended images or the world of images. Now, these suspended images can be compared to the image reflected in a mirror. Like the image that we see in a mirror, the imaginal forms, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, the imaginal forms are viewed as both real and unreal, existent and non-existent, i.e., the nature of the imaginal forms is always ambiguous, owing to its in-between position. Now, put in other words, it is a world of subtle bodies. Yeah, it is a world of subtle bodies where imagination gives substance to inner experience. That is why it is said that imagination has no locus except the soul. This in-between nature of the soul makes it ambiguous, undefined, but with untold potential. For each soul has been given the knowledge of all things. It's in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 31. Yeah? In principle, the reality of the soul is infinite. It has a beginning. Yeah, Surah Araf, ayat 172, but it has no end. That is why the soul has been called, an ocean without shore. And why it cannot be pinioned, for it has no fixed identity. It is always in a state of vacillation, wavering between the passions of the body and the luminous qualities of the spirit. So for Ibn Arabi, this in-between world is the barzakh, the junction of the two seas, the sea of spiritual meanings and the sea of sensory objects. The sensory things cannot be meaning, nor can the meanings be sensory. But the world of imagination, which we call the junction of the two seas, gives meaning corporal shape and makes sensory objects into subtle realities. So it becomes a bridge between the bodily and the spiritual aspects of man. Yeah? And in doing so, imagination allows for analogical knowledge and overcomes the dilemma inherent in the mind-body dualism. Sorry, let me say this. There was a knock on my door, but I said don't come in. As the bridge between the bodily and spiritual aspects of man, imagination allows for analogical knowledge and overcomes the dilemma inherent in the mind-body dualism of Descartes that has so vexed the rationalists. And this storehouse of imagination comprises of images from both the outward and the inward worlds, for it is in the soul that invisible or spiritual realities become visible, and bodily things spiritualize. The spiritual realities are known in the heart, and the soul manifests them by giving them forms and shapes, while the bodily or corporal things are perceived by the physical senses, and the soul spiritualizes them and subsequently store them in memory. Therefore, the activity of imagination in this realm, in this intermediate realm, is to give form to that which is formless, as well as to spiritualize that which is bodily or corporal. So in the words of Corbin, to attain to the world of subtle matter, one must have an organ of cognition, distinct from both intellect and from the senses. And for Al-Ghazali, this organ is the heart, the divine, subtle faculty that is the essence of man, where the spiritual journey takes place, where our transformation should take place. In other words, the heart is the meeting place between the world of the spirit and the world of the body. Now, why is this realm so important? Why is this realm so important? Which we don't think much about. Yeah. First, the search for this junction or sacred space has always been the goal of all spiritual journeys, as it is the meeting place of the past and present, of light and darkness, the ephemeral and the eternal. Secondly, this imaginary realm is the junction or confluence that brings together the realms of sense perception and that of spiritual realities, which converge within the core of the individual being. It is in this realm that knowledge of things take place, what is called Husul and Wusul. Husul is the arrival of meaning in the soul. Wusul is the soul's arrival at meaning. This happens simultaneously. If you want a bit more reading on this, you can read up Al-Atta's work. Yeah. Now, thirdly, this imaginary realm is an altogether distinct level of being or reality, the place, yeah, where spiritual realities are given forms and bodies spiritualized. It is also the realm where the union of opposites take place, where discrimination between opposites disappear, and where man is able to simultaneously experience the one and the many. Fifth, if this realm were to disappear, the prophetic and spiritual experiences, as well as the event of the resurrection, would lose their place. Lastly, this realm is the stairway that connects the lower world of Mulk to the higher intellectual world of Malakut. Therefore, within man, there are three levels of existence: the sensory, imagination, and intellection. There may be more, but this is the basic, what we say, three levels, which are present also within the physical world or within the universe, if you like. Yeah, within our world, because the world that we live in is only one level of reality. We are at the Mulk level. There are those two other levels, the Malakut as well as the Jabarut. There are also higher levels. So we live in a hierarchical, our existence basically, if you look at this, is hierarchical. Now, but let's take note. Although we say there are several levels, even within ourselves, we are mostly accustomed only to that first level, that sensory level, yeah? Because this is how things have been with us. All these years we have been socialized to focus only what is observable. But we know in our tradition, we have what is called the Ghaib. There are other worlds beside the one that we can see. There are others which lie beyond what we call the reach of our perception, conception, what we can think or what we can understand. And the higher the level of this reality, the more it is disengaged from the forms of this world. They become more subtle. Yeah, these higher levels of reality are more subtle and luminous, for they are nearer to the source. So take note. This is the second part. Now, when man knows his soul, now in himself, God is one. When we say God is one, we are talking about, we are saying, well, we are referring to God's essence, the Ahad, if you like. If you look at the names of God, you have the names of Ahad and Wahid. Yeah. So here, when we say God is one, we are saying the unknowable essence. Nobody knows, it's only God. Yeah. We are not supposed to question, we're not supposed to basically talk about it much because we don't know. We can never know because the finite, yeah, creatures can never know the infinite. Now, whereas self-disclosure takes the form of the many, the divine names and attributes. The divine names and attributes, as we know, are many. Yeah, 99 al-husna, al-asma al-husna. We have 99. Yeah, there are more, but the ones that we are familiar is are 99 in total. That is the level of the Wahid. So you have right at the top the essence, yeah, which is Ahad. When we talk about the multiplicity, it's at the level of the names. The diversity that we see in the cosmos is the result of the letter, the names, yeah, and attributes. But the root is the former. To put it another way, the divine self-disclosure is one, but the creatures receiving it are many, each receiving it according to its own preparedness. So although man imagines himself believing in God, this will always depend on himself, for each knows God only according to his own situation. That's why each one is asked to get to know one's own self. So each person's understanding will always be unique. So in the words of Al-Junaid, he said, the water takes on the color of its cup, i.e., the divine self-disclosure, when received by the heart, is colored or influenced by man's individual nature or preparedness. In other words, water is colorless and formless, just as the divine in itself is without any limiting qualities or attributes. But the cup of man's heart colors it according to his thoughts, needs, and desires. Hence, man knows God only to the extent, let me check, only to the extent, man knows God only to the extent that he knows himself. Or according to Ibn Arabi, man knows God only in the form of his belief, for none knows God but God himself. Therefore, we need to understand the saying, he who knows himself knows his Lord within this constraint and within this constraint and limitation. The few who truly knows and understand the finite can never know the infinite, for he knows that his knowledge comes from the infinite. Therefore, for most of us, we need to transcend. We need to transcend our God of belief. For most of us, we need to transcend our gods of belief, for the absolute can never be contained by anything, as it is the essence of everything. Man is the only creature who can recognize God fully. Give me 2 minutes here. Okay, sorry. Man is the only creature who can recognize God fully in respect of his oneself and his names, because he was created in his image. The inbreathing of his names as a potential to be realized in this world. But this knowledge is contingent on himself. That is why the soul, the real self, is never fixed. It is always moving, shifting and fluid to perceive the ever-changing self-disclosures of God. In other words, the soul or heart is wholly conscious. It perpetually fluctuates to bring two aspects, the two aspects of Tanzih and Tashbih together. For with the eye of imagination, the heart sees being present in all things. And with the eye of reason, it discerns its transcendent in the diversity of the divine faces. This is a quotation from Chitik. Yeah? Due to its constant state of flux, the soul or the heart is always in a state of becoming being or image. That is why it is said, man was created in the most beautiful stature. Yeah? With a primordial inclination for good. Now, each soul is inherently aware and conscious of its relation to a bond with God, our pact with Him, and of good and evil. For within our soul, there is the potential to become a true servant of God and to reflect His attributes, or to be iniquitous. Basically, you go the opposite. And that is why man is asked to purify or to transform his soul. For he prospers who grows it, and he fails who buries it. So what happens when man forgets his soul? When man forgets his soul, he becomes a wounded or a divided creature. Consisting only of materiality, he is spiritually empty. He's no longer whole, for in separating himself from his own soul, he becomes fragmented. In modern man's adherence to science and modernity, all references to the transcendence and vertical courses must go. Now, via science, two-pronged approach to empiricism and reductionism, not only has the transcendent been removed, but man too is reduced to only the material. The inner life, or the knowledge of the self, has been devalued and dismissed as unscientific in order to make way for objective knowledge. Therefore, in forgetting God, basically, man has forgotten himself of his special nature, that just as he is human, he is also divine, due to that divine spark, that inbreathing that God gave us. It is only by that divine spark or that consciousness within that he may preserve his unity and integrity as man. So if this is removed, he forfeits that state and becomes the lowest of the low, dissipated and dispersed in the infinite multiplicity of the world. So this is the reality of modern man. He lives a life that is divided or compartmentalized. The irony of which, as pointed out by Palmer, is such that having lived behind a wall long enough, the true self you try to hide from the world disappears from your own view. The wall itself and the world outside it becomes all that you know. Eventually, you even forget that the wall is there, and that hidden behind it is someone called you. That real you, the objective ontological reality of selfhood, which is whole and complete, has been kept under wraps for so long that one no longer knows that it is there. The emphasis on only objective knowledge has rendered self-knowledge or the inner knowledge as irrelevant and insignificant, basically. In other words, more information is made available, but not a better understanding or a deeper knowledge of oneself, its meaning and purpose. Therefore, without a transcendent God, the implication is that man is no longer a metaphysical being. The soul no longer has a place. For the vertical relationship between man as creature and God as creator has been forced out. So what remains is only the one horizontal plane that he lives in. Therefore, in rebelling against heaven, man basically denies God and consequently his own soul. Therefore, without an immaterial soul, he becomes the measure of all things. So everything is centered on him. He becomes the absolute, his rights dominating over God's right and the rights of God's creation. That is why for modern men, the self is predominant. If you see the literature in psychology, you will know it. Indeed, he has placed himself as the pinnacle of things, the first in the great chain of being, accountable to none. For without a higher moral restraint, he is free to do as he wishes. That's why the Quran, the Quran cautions against forgetting God. For in doing so, man forgets his own soul, i.e., there will be no longer Yeah, there will be no longer any obligation, if you like, any spiritual obligation on his part to remain conscious of the unity of purpose underlying all of God's creation, and hence a moral duty to treat all that exists with compassion. Therefore, the loss of transcendence is basically a spiritual disorder. And to compensate for this loss, the ego then takes over. But this is the big problem. The ego cannot transcend itself because it lies only within the psyche, i.e., its reality is only at the psychophysical level, only within this horizontal domain. So in reducing man from spirit to mind, mind to brain, brain to anatomical structures, thinking, which is what defines man, becomes merely a neurochemical process or an emergent property of the brain. I only have 2 more slides, so I'm tying things up. Therefore, in the Islamic tradition, when I say the Islamic tradition or Islamic intellectual tradition, what it means is basically you go back to the source, the Quran and the Sunnah. In the Islamic tradition, there are other worlds beside these visible one that we currently live in. There are and these worlds, or this reality, are hierarchically ordered. And within men too, we exist on more than one level, whether you want to believe in it or not. Within man itself, there are 3 levels, as we saw earlier. The sensory, which the sensory level to experience this world, the lived world, if you want to use that term, the lived world, the corporal world, the world of mood, imagination, the imaginary world, intellection, the spiritual world. Therefore, as a microcosm, man is complete into himself, for he is in essence made in the image of the whole. He cannot be reduced to the brain or to its byproduct. Now, just as man within us, there are these 3 levels. Likewise, similarly, the cosmos, the universe outside, also has these 3 basic levels. Mulk, Malakut or Jabarut. Ghazali used the in-between Jabarut, some use the in-between as Malakut, but basically you have these 3 levels. Now, in this sense, consciousness then, in this sense, you cannot therefore reduce man to the brain or to its byproduct, as what is being currently done in neuroscience. In this view, then, consciousness, awareness, and mental health are all properties of the soul. Let me mention also, when you talk about neuroscience also, they still have not answered the question of what consciousness is. They can never answer that. If it is in the brain, where in the brain? What exactly? There are a lot of work on it now, so it is limited. So basically, that reduction, and in fact, that reduction has been countered by many philosophers, many scientists also in this sense. So for us, consciousness, awareness, and mental life are all properties of the soul. It is the soul that experiences. It is the soul which knows the body as its body, not as an appendage that can be affixed or separated at will, for it is its own existential reality. So despite constant changes and renewals in the body, man perceives himself as he has always been, as a unity or wholeness that is preserved, since it is the soul that is the basis of his identity and individuality. Hence, existence can only be experienced or intuited, never conceived, never abstracted. That's why each person's existence or experiences is real to that person in this particular sense. So my last slide here. When we look at men, when we look at men, basically the soul is man. Well, but the soul cannot live, the soul needs a body. Yeah, that's when God created Adam, Adam was basically a body, but that body needs to be given that soul. So that inbreathing of God's spirit into the soul is a metaphor for giving him that, that soul or that life that we are supposed to lead here. Last slide here, men cannot be divided. He is whole, so you cannot divide men. This is self-esteem, this is self-concept, this is the fragmentary, our fragmented self. We cannot have that. Man cannot be divided, he's whole, but we have a dual nature that needs to work in harmony with one another. For his body is of this world, but the soul is not. He is a spiritual being on a human journey. You need to be here to go on a journey to return to the source. Okay. How do I get back to the page where I see everybody?
Stop sharing.
Stop sharing. Okay, stop sharing. Okay, good. Okay, sorry, that's it. Sorry, I took a bit longer, but like I said, it's not going to be an easy topic. That's why some parts I was just reading, because if I were to say it in my own words, I think it will be very confusing. But if there may be some things that you need me to elaborate, inshallah, I might be able to do so. Okay?
Okay. So, dear honorable guests, we are nearing the end of our Science of the Soul webinar series. Before that, we would like to open the floors for any questions. Participants who have any questions can unmute themselves or type down your questions in the chat box available. And YouTube attendees can write their questions in the comment box as well. I open the floors to anyone.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Farah. Prof, I am trying to sort of like digest the words, the written words on your slide. Which slide? The one that you mentioned about the reality of modern man. I think it is slide number 16.
Slide number 16, huh?
Okay. So you wrote underneath that statement, that is the reality of a modern man. You wrote he lives a life that is divided or compartmentalized. You wrote that, okay? So here, is it correct that somehow we sort of like unable to look at things in its bigger perspective? That's why we tend to sort of like compartmentalize whatever it is that comes into our way. Is it that, Prof?
That might be one, but if you look at how people live their life now, they don't take in the bigger picture. This, sometimes when you look at things that happen, you take things to heart immediately. You never consider that small thing, that thing that happened to you in the bigger context of things. Why is it happening to you? Because we get so bogged down with the nitty-gritty. We forget the bigger perspective. Yeah, that's why. You see, the soul, it is because we are our own soul. The soul is us, basically. Yeah. If you see, when I talk just now about the soul, why the soul is important? Because the soul can go both ways. Do you want to look only at the side of the nerves, or do you want to look at the side of the ruh? Yeah, the nerve is more on the desires, passion side, the one that you need to transform to move to the spiritual side. If you concentrate too much on that, you are not giving way to the other side. Yeah, because you see, we are not here to lead a life that is easy. Trials and tribulations are part of life. It is what makes us who we are. Psychology talks about, okay, trials and tribulation, we talk about coping, we talk about how we appraise. That's true, because all these later on, yeah, how we accept things, will make us a better person. It can make us stronger. Now, Islam has a concept of reda. Yeah, a concept of reda. Now, sometimes what happened can be so bad. Yeah, say COVID-19 the other day, somebody, somebody's husband passed away, left with 4 or 5 children, no source of income. It's a big tribulation or trial for the individual person. Now, how is this person going to look at it? Is this person only going? Of course, the necessity will come first, the caring and so on, yeah? But at the same time, you also need to take this into the bigger picture. Maybe this is God's trial on me, but because I am also a person who is employed, I can also fend for myself in that sense, yeah? So in other words, you need to take both sides, yeah? You need to take both sides. When I say both sides, the human side as well as the other side. Yeah, you need to bring both. Don't get too bogged down with what's happening only in this lived world, because this world is not going to be here forever for us. Yeah, because we have a role to play here. We go through our role here, it finish, we enter another phase of life in that sense, but in a different domain, in a different kind of environment. But it is a journey in that particular sense. Yeah, that is another meaning there in terms of a self that is compartmentalized. Now, there's another one, because I looked before at, work family linkages. When you come to work, people tend to say, oh, I want to separate my work from my life, from my life domain or from my family domain. So when I come to work, I work only. When I go back, I concentrate on my family. But that's impossible, isn't it? You can never do so. We have spillover. Yeah, we have spillover from one domain to another domain. You get stressed out at work, you bring into the family, vice versa. Because we are whole, we are one. We are one. We cannot separate in that sense. So always remember, you are not a machine. A machine can do that. Human beings have emotions. Yeah, human beings have emotion. So you move. But how you move is important. Do you want to move always on the dark side or the earthly side, or you want to move also on the bright side? Okay? I hope I get through to you.
Yes. I got it. I want to elaborate more, but I saw Prof. Taufik raising hands. So please, Prof. Taufik.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jusma. Thank you very much, Professor Nuraini. This is a very important lesson from you, and I feel this is hard science, I think, but this is important. My question is, why the modern psychology today tend to speak more about behavior and not about the soul? The basic meaning of psychology is about soul, science of soul, but we never learn about the soul itself. So is this relation between the soul in belief? Because Western people, most of them, they don't have a belief, so they try to ignore to speak about the soul.
Okay, I get your point. I think you need to go back to the Enlightenment period. Yeah, you need to go back to the Enlightenment period. It's a long, the answer is long, but the Enlightenment period, basically, by the end of that, you have the scientific revolution, yeah, the Reformation at that time. You have the Enlightenment by the 17th century, yeah, and then you have modernism, postmodernism. Everything basically changed. They had religion before, Christianity. Christianity was a religion. But over that period of time, yeah, the sciences took over from religion. So the science became their religion. So, but for science to become their religion, they need to push out the transcendent. They need to make man as the creator of that science, in that sense. There was a paper that I wrote, maybe the notion of man. Jus, can you share with Prof. Taufik that paper, The Notion of Man, from I think from the Islamic perspective and modern science. I discuss it in detail in that paper, because I think there's no point for me to discuss it here. It's already written. There's a lot of articles on it. But you see, that transcendent, they cannot have that transcendent, because if they have that transcendent, they would have to abide by that transcendent. So when they cut everything off, yeah, when they cut that, they become, they replace that God up there. Yeah, so that's why I put there, they become the apex or the pinnacle of this chain of being. The chain of being, it's from a philosopher, it's from a Catholic, he was a Catholic, I think was also a philosopher, Lovejoy. The name is Lovejoy. He talks about the chain of being. So I took it from there, but I changed it slightly. And in that chain of being, he started also with God, because during that period of time, people believed in a Godhead. Yeah, but that period of enlightenment destroyed everything. The rationalistic, they become very, they say their mind can replace God. Why do we need to basically think about or talk about on something which we cannot even, the immaterial that you cannot even conceptualize? Yeah, it's abstract in that sense. That's why faith is faith. Religion, you have to believe it as a faith. It's belief. Yeah, in that sense. But I think the article argued it quite well to me. Yeah, please have a look at it. Yeah, so they cannot have that. If they have that, they cannot do what they are doing in that particular sense. But without that, when they cut that, soul would disappear. Soul has to disappear. Yeah, the soul will automatically disappear, because the soul is the link between us and that, and God, in that sense. Yeah. So have a look at that piece of paper. It's quite long, but I think it will answer your question.
I will pass that paper to Prof. Taufik, inshallah.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think even for me, when I was preparing this, I was thinking, because we all come from different backgrounds, we have our own porch, our own understanding of things. Yeah, it will not be easy. Even for me, when I was preparing it, it was not easy for me. Yeah, so I was trying to make it as easy as I could. But at the same time, I think if this is recorded, just listen to it a few more times. I think once you listen to it, some things might seep in, because this takes time. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Prof. Just to recapitulate a bit on the compartmentalization thingy just now. Sorry, Prof, tak parti lagi nak tanya. So meaning that, let's say for example, if you are unable to, let's say you are being, you are experiencing something quite negative, right? Something quite negative, it affects you badly. For example, going back to the example that you gave us just now during the COVID-19, when someone loses his or her loved ones, for example. So we are thinking about what actually is the thing that we need to understand out of this. So let's say if you are so grossly focused on only the aspects of perhaps the negativity of losing oneself, for example. So when you are only focused in that one sense, somehow, will that be an exact example of compartmentalizing it, rather than, let's say, for example, you are able to sort of like link the hikmah behind the sort of negative experience to a larger context of living, for example, that is not so much compartmentalized. And in other words, perhaps you are able to see the big picture of things. Is that it, Prof?
You can see that. No, in slide 10, I showed you a number of reasons why this intermediate realm of the soul is important. Because if you say you don't have a soul, then who does? You know, when you think about something, you know, when you talk about what you were talking about, what is it? What is it doing that? Who is doing that? Yeah. There are five, I think, or 5, 6 reasons there that I put. Look at that slide again. That's why the soul is important. You cannot get rid of the soul. Yeah, it's just that, you see, this is why I think modern psychology is in a dilemma also. They push aside, you know, let me come to a bit about ethics. Ethics basically, because I was teaching ethics, I was finishing my research methods course yesterday here. So I touched on ethics, okay, professional ethics. Now, when you talk about ethics, the West looks at ethics as something external, okay, something external, which you put on and off according to your needs. Okay, I'm a professional clinical psychologist, for example. So when I see my client, I put on this hat of a professional clinical psychologist when I see my patient. So I talk to my patient, blah, 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 and so on. Then I showed them a few articles where these psychologists, violated the ethical principles. Where they violated all their ethical principles. The number of articles now, yeah, psychologists themselves has violated their ethical principles. So what is happening there? Why are they doing so? Because ethics is used as is externalized. It's not within the self. But Islam looks at ethics. Ethics is from the word akhlaq. Huluk is the singular. Remember, hul. And there was a verse in the Quran that talks about it of the Prophet. You have a magnificent character. Character is what we are supposed to be looking at in ethics. So when you talk about ethics here, so ethics is the domain of virtues. So when you talk about psychology wants to talk about integrity. You want to talk about, when you talk about virtues, where are all these virtues? It has to be in the soul. It cannot be something you put on and off when you come and see your subject or your client. You get my point? So coming back to what you say, that's why I said modern psychology is having a lot of problems in that sense, but they don't see it. They don't see it. They need this, but you know that's why I think they confuse themselves. Because if you they remain only at the level of the psyche. The psyche now, the psyche before is different. Because if you look back from where psychology started, psychology is a study of the soul at that time, isn't it? It's the immaterial soul. You look at the early work in psychology, it talks about the understanding of this immaterial soul. That's what they were looking at. But over time, that subject matter changed. Yeah, from the soul, immaterial, they move to the, when you talk about behaviorism, you look at the focus. Freud talks about the unconscious,
Yes.
but the unconscious is not your soul. The unconscious can be some element of what is in your nature. Okay, and then behaviorism came in. It talks about your behavior. So it changes over time. Humanism, humanistic psychology. Humanistic psychology can be quite dangerous because you make yourself as God in that particular sense. Yeah, and then you have the transpersonal psychology, Jungian psychology, and so on. Jung is even worse because people look at him as being somebody who knows religion. He is using religion, but look again, he is what he's doing is spiritualizing. He is psychologizing the spiritual, which is even worse in that particular sense. Yeah, so you need to be aware. Yeah, that's why you need to go back to the roots, the philosophy of the psychology, how it came into being, and the different, especially for people in clinical, because people here are very clinically oriented. They talk a lot about psychotherapy. You have a lot of psychotherapy clinics here. So I told the students, because I teach research methods and ethics. It's a course for the PhD program for clinical psychology. So I said, you don't even know the philosophy of psychodynamic theories. It's from psychoanalysis. Who started psychoanalysis? You need to go back. Now, when you talk about your CBT is based on behaviorism. Yeah, and if you look at your ACT now, again, it's behaviorism. ACT is a newer version of CBT, and which is based on behaviorism. They don't go deep enough to the source. They are taking it only as it comes. And I think I was doing that before. I cannot, but now I think I know a bit better. So I'm trying to help them, to somehow get things properly aligned. But I don't teach, I only teach methods. So it's only within the methods. I bring it only within the ethics part. Okay? But ethics is very important for us because, if the ethics, even when I'm looking at what's happening within our country now in Malaysia, you want to have integrity. Okay? You want to have integrity. How do you start that? You need to know the basic, the self. You need to know yourself. If you don't know about this, that's why I think psychology is very important in that sense. Because if we are promoting the secular psychology that we know, we would never change what we mean by integrity. It's only something that you put on and off again because it's one of the code, comes under the code of ethics. That's it. It's never within the soul. So you need to start. That's why it's not easy to transform, to know ourselves, to change ourselves is very difficult. Yeah, sometimes people don't have time for that. Yeah, I know it's not easy. That's why I said, not sure how to get this done, but never mind, I'll do it. Then you can discuss. We can discuss next time. Inshallah. Yeah. Is there anything else before we leave? Are there any questions that you want to ask? Anything?
If there is no more question, I would like to close the Q&A session. Okay.
Okay. Oh, Karim. Karim raised his hand.
Okay.
Okay, Karim.
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam.
And you hear
Macam
me?
mana tak ada muka ni?
I'm
tak
not sure.
nampak.
I'm not sure why my camera is not working.
Okay.
Basically, my question is more on in terms of methodology itself, because I think what you share is very important in terms of how the soul is basically integrated in most concept of psychology. Talk about memory, talk about consciousness, talk about attention, everything. Soul is actually integrated. It's not like one different component
The
of it.
soul is there. Kita yang bikin separate-nya.
So basically, my question is in terms of methodology, because I think for us to focus on soul and psychology being a science, basically academic writing or writing or research in this matter is very important. So based on what I've seen from what you shared, a lot of the data is based on archival data or old manuscript. So does this mean that moving forward, instead of very heavily focusing on quantitative only, qualitative approach is also very important, especially to highlight this importance of soul itself?
Betul? There are a lot of work on that. If you can look at our early Muslim scholars. Hang on. There was yesterday, I was talking to Human. His surname is a bit too long. I cannot remember his surname. He said he will send me a book. I suspect. No, not his book. Because he wanted to give me. I have his soft copy of his. He call it tips. The traditional Islamic integrated psychotherapy. Yeah, tips. He used psychotherapy, I think. So he gave me a soft copy, and it's an edited book basically. Because you were talking about it yesterday. We were saying we need materials. Where do we get the materials from? How you can start if you want to teach something like this, because he was telling me how he teach his class. He start by deconstructing everything that the West has done, he said. So when he approached, he looked at what the West has given in that particular sense, and then one by one he go through that, and he look at what we have in terms of our scholarly from our Muslim scholars before. And then he tried to basically bring this, because these are all, see, from the Western side, you have theories. Then you will start to see the theories propounded by them, the theories that they propound all have this, they have a lot of contradiction. They don't see eye to eye, many of those. So he was saying, what's happening here? But basically, it's trying to go back to the nature of man. Okay? So the nature of man is very important. So how is this nature? Now, and then he bring in the Islamic perspective, he said. The Islamic perspectives are from the work of our Muslim scholars. Now, there are materials, it's just that the materials may not necessarily be in one book. It's not like a textbook that we have currently that we are used to in teaching. Because when you are asking methodology, now what exactly do you mean by that methodology? Is it a methodology for teaching, or is it a methodology of knowing yourself? Because in terms of knowing yourself, there are quite a number of manuals, but if you read those, they are reported based on the experiences of each individual person. And each individual person is very different. That's why when they give their version of how they change, it might not be exactly the same. There will be similarities, but not exactly the same. So when you say methodology, Karim, methodology to know yourself or methodology of how to teach?
I think my focus is more on methodology in terms of, for example, if you were to produce a paper or an article or to discuss about soul itself, it's very important for us to have an empirical evidence, especially in psychology being a science. So this is where very heavily nowadays we are very focused on quantitative as the empirical evidence, but qualitative.
I don't look at that anymore, Karim. I think that's useless. I tell you why. You can only do that to one extent. The rest you can't. Because we live in this particular world. Yeah, our world is a mulk world, the seeing world. Yeah, we are embodied. When we come to this world, we become embodied. We are given a body, but what is in that body is something that you don't see. I don't see your soul. You don't see my soul. But what we see is the manifestation of that soul. The behavior manifested is from that soul. You get my point? But if you want to talk about empirical studies, you can talk about empirical studies, yeah, but you can only understand to a certain level. You cannot go beyond a certain level if you concentrate solely on what is observable, because what is observable is very, very limited. This world is very tiny. This world that is visible is very tiny. Yeah, there are many other layers up there that we don't see. It becomes as we go deeper, if you like, you can go upward this way or you can go deep within you. Those worlds are subtle. Just like the soul, you cut up a person, you can never see that soul. Yeah, because it is subtle. What you see is a body. Yeah, you see the vein, and so on. Yeah, of the person, you will see a heart of the person beating, but that heart is not the subtle heart that Al-Ghazali and the Muslim scholars have been talking about. These are all within the ghaib domain. God himself is ghaib in that sense. We don't see him, but we know. That's why there's a verse in the Quran. Whichever way you turn, you see the face of God. Why? Because everything, yeah, is his creation. Everything is his creation in that particular sense. Yeah. So if you want to do, yes, if you want to get your papers published, that's why I cannot publish in this particular manner. Okay, I cannot publish in quantitative journals, but there are other journals. Okay. This morning I received, we wrote a paper on the self, contestation of the self, because the self now is very contested, yeah? Contestation of the self. 2 reviewers, 1 reviewer, I've not looked at it properly. 1 reviewer liked it very much, the other reviewer has lots and lots and lots of comments. Really look at this, really look at that. So I will need to check later on, you know. So it will always be like that. But it's not, it cannot be an empirical journal. Empirical journal will never accept this. So if you want to go to mainstream psychological journals, I think the paper that we sent to, what journal was it? Right? I think it's more of more philosophical. I think it's Sophia. I think it's Sophia. The journal is Sophia. It's more philosophical. A philosophical journal, then it's fine. You don't need empirical data. But if you want to publish in empirical journal, then you need to do things differently. Yeah.
Thank you.
Karim, are you okay?
Yeah. So basically, moving forward is very important for us to go beyond the numbers or quantitative.
You don't need to prove that the soul exists. Why do you want to prove the soul exists? To whom?
Maybe we're not proving, but we want to highlight because a lot of people are, because basically the more we can highlight in terms of our article or our documentation, then there is more discussion for it. But if you were just to discuss like our vocal discussion now, maybe it's not expanded the discussion. So it's basically to expand the discussion further.
Okay, you can do that if you want to, but I think I've done that part. I'm not looking at it anymore. You know why? Because when I've been working a lot on well-being. I was looking at well-being. You know, now I'm thinking this being We talk about being, the name. That's why I think names are used ad hoc now without really thinking in depth about what those names or those terms imply. Now, well-being itself, there are two words there, yeah? Wellness and being. Yeah, that being, who is this being? Who wants to be well? Yeah, the wellness of this being. Who is this being? So when I think about it, that being is basically a secular being. That's why they are never well in that particular sense, because the wellness here is only a wellness of this world. And then when I look at how is it defined? Oh, or, very material in that sense. Yeah, it's all quantitative. All that you can quantify is never. Now they want to bring in meaning, they say. They want to bring meaning. But when you talk about meaning, purpose, art, you're talking on a different level, but they don't see that. That's the paradox, I say. Because they have gotten rid of the soul, they want to bring that in. They cannot bring that in anymore because then it will no longer be scientific. Yeah. So they say, yeah, we need to bring in, in the definition of well-being now, yeah, besides the quantitative measures of well-being, satisfaction, we need to bring in satisfaction is more like emotion, it's more like the satisfaction is not too bad also, but they want to bring in now purpose. Yeah, they want to bring in, whether you can thrive in your environment and so on. Thriving, flourishing, words that they use in positive psychology, those are not words of quantitative research, of the quantitative, what we say, domain. They are more attributes of the soul. But that's why they cannot fit that properly. That's why they have problems, I tell you. You can try to figure it out. You can try to figure it out. I leave it to you. You are the younger generation.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay, you're most welcome.
I saw my Sarah raising her hands. Okay, my Sarah, please. Unmute your microphone, Mai.
Right. All right. Sorry. Assalamualaikum and good day, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam.
So last weekend, Dr. Diana and I had the opportunity to present the work of Muslim scholar on the nature of soul. So in the presentation, we presented how each Muslim scholar explained the nature of soul. And then we got a response saying that from all the explanation from each Muslim scholar, is it possible to have one framework on what is human soul, or should we explain the nature of soul by looking into perspective from each scholar?
You can do both, actually. You can do both. You can summarize what all those have written. Yeah, because when you summarize those, I think you will see a lot of similarities across. Yeah, and in the book, this is Al-Ghazali's work on the heart. I think there's a diagram there that he put in. Look at that diagram, because I think that diagram to some extent is taken from Al-Attas also. Yeah, it's a nice diagram. Yeah, so you can do both. You can summarize, because when you summarize, you will see a lot of similarities, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Then you can come up with, this is what we think, because there's also articles, Rothman and Coyle's article that they have been presenting on the framework of how they see the human being also. So maybe you want to look at that. And their study, Karim, their study, Rothman and Coyle, Google up Rothman and Coyle, they have been doing quite a number of empirical studies. And they have been doing quite a number of empirical studies, both qualitative and I think it's more qualitative, yeah, on understanding more about the person, also on the nature of the person. I'm not totally agreeable, but there's some things that you can take from there. Because Karim also, I'm addressing this to Karim too. You can check Rothman, yeah, and Coyle, C-O-Y-L-E. Rothman is R-O-T-H-M-A-N, Rothman. Yeah, so you can do both, mine.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof.
No problem. Yes, Rothman and Coyle, correct.
I put up the link to Rothman and Coyle.
They quite a number of papers, basically. So they can check. They can check. This is a framework. There's a qualitative study that he did also, which people can read up. But theirs is more towards a more. They are clinicians, I think, in that sense. Coyle was Rothman's supervisor before. Shall we okay, Jules?
Yeah, I think we're good. Any other queries or questions or concerns from the attendees, please? Perhaps we can take this opportunity to interact with Prof. Nuraini. I have lots of questions, Prof, but then I will ask you later on.
Yeah, I think so.
Later on. Right. So
Yeah,
perhaps we can have like a couple more minutes, other attendees who might want to send in or put up their questions or queries or ideas or whatever it is.
Dr. Pemilia.
Salam, Prof. Nuraini. Thank you
Walaikum
so much.
salam.
Thank you for your talk. I just want to ask your opinion if, because I'm teaching positive psychology at the moment, and I was
What personality?
positive
positive.
psychology. And I was also working on an article where I was writing something about if it was even possible to see the similarities and kind of like a merge of a framework between the PERMA model and a Maqasid Sharia, because and the three components there. And I was working on that and coming up with a kind of a combination of that and showing that the Maqasid Sharia actually already has a lot of the components in the PERMA model. And I'm not sure if that's is that a good direction to go into, or no need to merge or anything like that? Because I was trying to actually show that it already exists, actually, this PERMA model, even in the Maqasid approach. And how can we kind of combine the two to illustrate and maybe just make it applicable from a positive psychology perspective?
Ma'am, for me, I would not even go into that. Yeah, but since you are a young student, sorry, not student, a young staff. sorry, my apologies. You are staff.
Okay.
You are, a young staff. You want to get papers out. You want to see how people react to your papers, also, isn't it? Yeah, you are your platform and mine differs in this sense. Yeah, you may want to do. I will not go through it because to me, what is in the Maqasid basically is sufficient in its own. I don't need to justify that by comparing it with a model which is,
Secular.
Yeah, I will not even think about doing that. Yeah, but for you, if you think this is one way you can get papers out, I will leave it to you. Okay?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Prof.
You're welcome.
Hello, Assalamualaikum, Prof. How are you doing?
Waalaikumsalam.
Hope you're well.
Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
I'm following the command of the big boss, Dr. Jismawati, telling me to interact with Prof. Nuraini because it's not a common occurrence. But anyway,
It's okay.
anyway, I was like whispering to Dr. Jusmawati yesterday, talking about, because if you know about my line of work has been about extremism, and I've been doing the work about Islamic extremism a lot. And it's quite difficult to not connect the fact that a lot of the Muslim extremists, the words I've read about them, how they like consider why they do what they do is because they want to get closer to God. But you know, like when we talk about being closer to God, they're talking about a lot of spiritual stuff. You know, how, like, for example, the one that I mentioned to Dr. Jusmawati yesterday, the next clue that I'm trying to diverge into is dream, you know, because I was talking to my colleague members about like how they say that dream is sort of like it's a way of like, because dream can't be proven as well. I mean, we can do a lot of studies about dream, but in a way that we can't, just like how we can't prove the existence of soul, we can't quite prove the existence of dream despite all the neuroscientific research that talks about it. They will actually also research trying to recreate dreams using modern technologies. But somehow these dreams have been one of the way whereby selected individuals, like whether they're extreme or not, use it as to guide them. It's even been found in like studies about cults, in various other research about, you know, other like followers of different religion as well. Because it's a way that they feel like a spiritual, like, sorry, a non like provable, like like something that we can't prove, something that happens beyond like, you know, beyond the reality of the world. Like, because I feel like dream could be an example of that somehow, can also be used.
Can I interrupt you there, Miza?
Yeah.
Dream is like the imaginable world. When you say the imaginable,
Yeah.
dream is that world. So
Yeah.
it's real, not real kind of thing.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you wake up, you feel very real. Sometimes you don't. It's
Mhm.
yeah. But I don't want to say much about it, basically, because you know, like you said, you
Mhm.
have your dream, I have my dream. How can we
Yeah,
what is a true dream and so on? Yeah, if we ourselves are not fully transformed properly in that sense, you know, our dreams will never be a true dream.
exactly. Sorry, just like going back to that, I just want to say like how like this, like if we were to communicate about this sort of like our understanding of the soul, is it possible that, because it's basically difficult for us to prove it, but our intention, of course, for to do good, right? When we try to further understand our soul, you know, but like the misinterpretation of that could possibly occur as well. And then it's sort of like and like emotional, like that emotional experience itself can differ from person to person, but there's also a potential of misguidance which could occur. That's the one that I feel like somehow like an area that could possibly be explored further, because people who feel that they are understanding their soul, they could, like, you know, have like a misunderstanding of it as well.
Yeah, I want to touch, because these are not questions, isn't it? This is more of sharing comments. The first part I need to say about extremism, there's a lot of work now on that, you know. But the Quran basically says that. It talks about, you know, we create you from a pair, from, yeah, you remember? And then you become, yeah, many communities, and then from there, you know, you should not, well, you from that many communities, you're supposed to learn from one another, not to be antagonistic towards one another, yeah? If you have time, just Google up Abdal Hakim Murad. He's at the Cambridge Muslim College. He is, let me, Muslim, hang on, at the Cambridge Muslim College. He had done, there is a book, he's not recent, but he compiled, what is it, written in, there's a new book that he wrote. He talks about this ideology. He calls this ideology, the extremists. He didn't call this following the religion. He called this these are people, you know, who's following an ideology because they don't really know what Islam is. You get my point. His new book, Abdal Hakim Murad, what is his new book? The cover has a boy, Abdal Hakim Murad. How can I check here? Oh, hang on. Yeah, I'm not very good with trying to do too many things. It's on Coming Home, is it? Or Traveling Home. That's the title of his new book. Abdul Hakim Murad. You are better than me Googling and staying on the page. I can't do that. Yeah. It's bluish in cover. It's like a window, a child looking out from the window. Yeah. In there, he has a number of essays. A few of those essays talk about this extremism, why it happened, and what he calls it. Because he said it's basically, these people don't really know the true Islam, he said. It's not Islam as being the ritual Islam, but the deeper understanding of Islam.
I think that's I mean, that is at least personally, I find that a very
Traveling Home. Yeah, correct. Traveling Home. Essays on Islam in Europe. Yeah, he's an Englishman where he converted to Islam. He is the one who runs. Well, he was the one who started the Cambridge Muslim College in Cambridge. Yeah, and he's the imam of the college of the masjid there now, the mosque there now. Rothman is the director of the Cambridge Muslim College now. Okay, so you look at that book. That's a very nice book.
Thank you, Prof, for entertaining.
You can get it.
Comment.
You can get it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I see Izzati raising her hands. Please, Izzati.
Just don't force people to raise their hands.
No, I didn't force. I didn't do anything. I didn't even say anything. They just want to raise their hand. It's okay, Prof.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam. Mana tak ada rupa ni, tak nampak nak tengok.
Sekejap.
Yeah, that's better, isn't it?
Right. I just think about it. It just randomly happened to my mind. When you talk about soul, it's basically ourselves, But how do we describe the soul of people who experience like so-called neurosis, or those who somehow lost their sanity, or people who are insane? How should we describe? It's just pop up to my mind. Okay, thank you, Prof. That's my question.
I may not be able to answer you properly, but but there are reasons for that. Some people are just mad, but some people who goes to see psychotherapists, I don't think they are mad. They have some issues which they cannot settle themselves. Yeah, because you see, the mind is never empty. It thinks, and when you start thinking, the thinking part can make you go bonkers also sometimes. Isn't it? One can be depressed by the sheer weight of the thinking itself, the distractedness of the outside world, as we say. There's a lot of distractions. That distraction can make you astray. So try to focus on, focus on God, because that is your relationship with Him. You are here because of Him. Don't focus on what is not important to you. Yeah, but there are some people who are just, like you say, just to you, they may look mad, but maybe they're not mad, in a way. I don't know also. Some condition could be biochemical, which is true too. Yeah, but I think a lot of people who goes to clinics for to see psychiatrists, I think most of them is just their mind working too much. They think too much over things, about things. Yeah. I cannot answer you properly there. The way I understand it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Okay. Okay, Juice.
Okay. Okay. Since Prof has indicated, time's up. Okay.
Yeah, time's up.
Time's up. But we have so many questions. We will email you, Prof. Okay. So thank you so much, Prof. It has been a pleasant session with you. Finally to see you over there. Is it snowing over there, Prof?
No, not yet, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I think by end of this month probably, you know.
Okay. Nanti Prof hantar video snow dekat sana ya. Okay. And then thank you so much for our colleagues over there in Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. Okay, I give the floor back to Farah to wrap up this session. Thank you so much. So nice to see you, Prof.
Yeah. Nice to see all of you too. There are lots of students that I used to remember. Some have become teachers in their own right. So do your work properly. Yeah. So insyaAllah ada rezeki kita jumpa lagi. Yeah. So you all take care.
Okay, Farah, you can wrap up the session. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for all of the questions, and I hope that the answers have fulfilled our doubts a little bit more. And for now, we will close the Q&A sessions as per requested. So Alhamdulillah, we have successfully come to the end of our webinar. And once again, I would like to say thank you to everyone for gracing our ceremony with presence, and a million thank you to our honored guest, Professor Dr. Nuraini Mohamad, Professor Dr. Shukran. I guess he left for the psychology day, and Professor Dr. Taufik Kasturi for actually allocating some time out of their busy schedule to be with us today. And thank you as well to the respected guests from Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. And we would also like to thank all staffs, academic members, brothers, sisters, fellow students for attending our Science of the Soul webinar series, The Soul as the In-Between. So on behalf of the organization committees, I would like to apologize if we have made any mistakes throughout the webinar. And as usual, every journey has its end. So, and every path does stop somewhere. So with that, let's end our program with Tasbih Kafarah and Surah An-Nas. Okay. Before we leave, could we take a picture, like with all academic members and all attendees available?
Yes, please.
Can
Okay.
you take a picture with everybody? How do you take a picture?
Diorang pandai sekejap lagi. Dia petik apa saya pun tak tahu.
Okay, so everyone that wants to be in the picture can turn on your camera. I will wait for 1 minute. I guess that is everyone. So I'll be taking the picture now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you everyone for participating, and I hope to see all of you soon.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum. Bye, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam. I'm going to leave here.
Okay.
Bye, Prof. Take care.
Yeah, you all take care too.